All right, everybody, why don't we go ahead and call the order at 5:11 this evening. If we could stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move right on to public comment and hybrid meeting mode. We offer both in person and online public comment. Priority is given to in-person comments. I do not see any, right? Nobody left that was here previously that I'm aware of for public comment in person. So we'll go ahead and open up public comment virtually. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and then we'll make sure that you are able to provide your comment, and please provide name and address. Okay. All right, excellent, thank you. We'll move on to item B, which is minutes. So could I get a motion to approve the attached June 8, 2022 minutes? Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Can I get a motion to approve the attached June 15, 2022 minutes? Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Go ahead and move on to correspondence. This would be correspondence received from 6:14 to 6:30. We did not receive anything. But please always remember to, if we do, that is the opportunity as building committee members to take a look at our agenda packets, review those pieces of course that promises to come in. Also take the opportunity to remind our community members to use our contact form and our website. So right on our homepage at the bottom, you can contact us at any time, questions, comments, or thoughts, and we will make sure to respond to that in a timely manner. So we'll move right on to item F, which is reports. First is chair report, nothing specific from me. Today we'll obviously have a couple of other items that we'll elaborate on as those additional reports, but nothing from me specifically. So we'll move right on to number 2, town council liaison report.
Not much to report. Our next meeting is Tuesday the 12th.
Any questions for Donnie? All right, we'll go right on to Board of Education liaison report.
In terms of meeting, we're pretty much off for the summer, but I know a notice went out to the board members about the 20th.
Perfect, that's the joint meeting that we talked about at our last meeting, so. Any questions for that? All right, 1928 Building Committee liaison report, Chris.
Okay, the RFQ for architectural services was issued, responses have been received, and the committee members are in the process of scoring those in our typical fashion. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 12th at 4:30 here in the library, at which point in time we'll review the takeaways from the stakeholder space needs meetings with the probate and community recreational service departments. We'll also review the score proposals and shortlist firms, at which point they'll be invited to an interview. And interviews are tentatively scheduled to take place at the July 26th meeting. That's it.
What day of the week are meetings?
So that's 12th this Tuesday. July 12th is the next meeting.
All right, any questions for Chris on 1928? All right, we will move right on to item 5, owner's rep report.
Sure. So just a couple things to update the committee on. The work group met last week. We did review the cost estimate reconciliations and worked on a value management list and alternate list, which you will we'll talk a little bit more as we go to one of the motions that are later in the agenda. So we'll go through the results of those and where we ended up at that point. We did start professional team meetings every Monday. We didn't meet this Monday because of the holiday, but we bring the entire professional team together to review each item, any hot buttons, anything that might be missing from each other. And it's been a good opportunity to keep us on task. And so just a couple of things to update there. The structural review from Russell Dawson is expected back to the professional team on July 8th. If you recall, we hired Russell Dawson to do a structural peer review. So that's due in a couple of days. The code review from Joe Versteeg we received on July 5th. That's under review right now with the design team. The professional engineering review, that's the final professional engineering review, the final set. We expect to have a CD set to them to DTC by July 20th or so for their final review. DTC will then take that set, possibly even incorporate comments from the state if need be. But we have our PCR meeting, I think it's on the 26th. And so we're in preparation for that as well. The HVAC review from IES, another consultant that the committee had hired. We received comments from IES on June 30th, and those are back and forth, and we're kind of just diving into those comments as well. So I know O&G has issued a contract to RAM for pre-detailing of the steel. If you recall, we approved having the pre-detailing, so that's coming. We're just waiting for further development on those structural drawings to really get moving on those. And then you'll hear from O&G more on enabling plans. We did engage a testing lab, so IMTL has sent us a proposal. I've asked them to update that proposal with the state contract requirements. Kat, I know you're on the call, so I'll be forwarding that revised proposal to you and Devin, basically to process a purchase order that which will probably be in the amount of about $5,000, and that purchase order will just be will bill against that purchase order. If we don't spend all $5,000, the remainder goes back to contingency. Then we'll open up another purchase order when we get into phase 2. That's about it. I know that we've been reviewing bid packages. O&G had forwarded the start of their bid packages for phase 2, and so our team's been reviewing those. That's it.
Just one other quick point. Now that we're in July, Kathy, the grant commitment letter should be coming from school construction grants any time now. So as soon as someone gets around to signing it, I'm sure they'll email us. They'll just keep what they usually go to do. So
Any questions for Mark or Chris? I'll move on to item number 6, so that's architect report.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're continuing to finish the construction documents, in other words, the plans and specs, in preparation for the sign off by the joint committees for the board and its committees on the 20th, when we have our meeting then. We'll probably bring another wagon full of drawings that we will deliver to Kat's office for the record. And then we'll be meeting with school facilities with the state on the 26th as scheduled. We did receive, as Mark reported, the third-party code review report from Joe Versteeg. We got that this week. And we immediately distributed it to all of our consultants. The comments pertain to structural, mechanical, electrical, as well as architectural. So we'll collect all of the responses and get them back to Joe Versteeg. Once we get all of those responses back to him and he's agreeable to them, then we'll have him sign off on those comments, and we'll take those comments and parade them through the building department, the fire marshal's office, and the health department in order to get their sign-offs. Just as a reminder, the reason you hired a third-party code reviewer is to make the review process quicker. A lot of municipalities, building departments, and fire marshal's office would be just overwhelmed with the voluminous reviews that they would have to do on such a document. These kinds of projects come along maybe once in a lifetime, in a community, and so they were not prepared to do that. So Joe Versteeg did a good job. I did notice that some of his comments, there was some lag time between the set that Joe received, the set of documents, which were the pricing set, and the current state of the documents. We've already addressed many of the things that he made comments about. But anyway, we'll finish our responses and get them to Joe, we hope, this week. So that's moving along. A couple of old items, state permits, DOT permits for OSTA, the Office of State Traffic Authority, and then the other permit, which is DEP. We did get the DEP permit to proceed, so you have a temporary permit number, so you can start construction as far as DEP is concerned. There was quite a lag time in getting the application uploaded to the state's system. Their system has been down for quite some time. So that's behind us now. We still have the state DOT permit, the OSTA permit in front of us. It's pretty far along. I think Michael will agree, but we don't have the final right sign off. We did attend the value management sessions as Mark reported, and we have a number of alternates, which I know we'll be talking about later. During a working session, I was asked, I think it was by Michael Smith, are there all ads or deducts in the alternate list? I said, there's one deduct. Just to make things a little more interesting on bid day. So it will be interesting to see. Who knows? Maybe some bidders, even though we're predicting an ad, you never know. You might get someone inserting a number with parentheses. Right? They just view it a little differently. Does sometimes happen. Anyway, there are a total of 10 alternates, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. Anything else?
Is there any reason to be concerned about the DOT permitting at this point? I know that we had talked about a time frame. I think it was we needed it by September.
Yeah, it's ideal to be able to have a PCR meeting on 26th, but we knew that that was not going to happen. So we go to our PCR meeting, we say, we're working on it still. And then they may give us a letter saying, you can't award a contract until OSA is signed off. That's usually what happens. So it doesn't usually hold up bidding. Our bidding is mid-August, right? So we want to be able to get approval to bid letter by mid-August. That's the time.
So we're a month away.
And then,
With
then if we're going-
vacations and
and if we're
limited
pushing
meetings.
into award, we're talking about an award towards the end of September, towards the end of September.
Yeah.
So there, that's when it becomes most critical, is about the 30th of September.
All right,
When it
well,
actually
let's
affects the
talk
project.
after that and see if, we can put pressure on our end if you feel it's necessary at this point. Because I know we have limited meetings coming up too. And I know we had put our reps, we notified them with a letter saying that, this could be a potential issue and, hopefully you're ready to help us if we need, blow the siren. So you just got to let me know what's realistic.
You're saying with your town council. now.
Correct,
I
sorry.
just want to make sure you're
Yeah.
clear on.
Because, we could push from our end as well.
I think what happened is we received all their comments,
Yep.
and then we replied, our team has replied back.
Yep.
Right? So I don't know what's typical once we reply back with that time frame usually is. I mean, they reviewed it.
Typical is, I'm not sure anything is typical with DOT. So they have been notoriously slow in the reviews that we've had on our projects. But the best thing to do is maybe to ask the town to reach out, maybe either the town council or perhaps professional staff in the town, maybe the engineering department has a personal connection with someone at DOT. That might be helpful.
I think Russ has a connection, obviously, with, the three routes coming through. We deal with them quite often. So I think if you want, we could talk to Russ and then follow up at the next meeting to see if we need to get any higher than that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. All right. Let's move on to construction manager report.
Okay, so as far as the pre-construction schedule, nothing to report as of tonight. We're still anticipating the PCR meeting date for July 26th, so everything's kind of rolling into that. As was mentioned earlier, work on the front end documents for incorporation into the PCR submission, so all of our front end will be done at the same time. Just a reminder, the July 20th is a firm date, right? That's all been scheduled, right? That's all official. Okay, so it's important, very important date, and as was mentioned earlier, in that same time frame. And I think it was Kat did a great job lining everybody up, the fire marshal, building inspector, she had them all show up for one meeting with the signing. So, you know, these next couple of weeks, that's what's pending, is all these signatures and just getting ready, that final push to go up to the state. Other than that, I was gonna have Nelson report on where things are with the phase 1 construction.
Phase 1 construction, we held a kickoff, so contracts have been issued to Gerber. We're waiting for their certificate of insurance before they deliver the equipment. We had a kickoff meeting with project team members and Gerber on the 24th, basically to set the rules and regulations that we run our jobs by, certified payroll, CHRO plans, the submission of paperwork, and so forth. Follow-up meeting we held on June 30th, last Thursday, to go over site logistics. I had the engineering department and CSG there. So we went over site logistics on utility, existing utilities, but specifically the fiber line that goes up on T. And to go over salvaged items and basically ran through all the items that the town wanted salvaged. Call before you dig was placed. They actually marked out, you'll notice that the parking lot was marked out. Site surveyor will be on site with a GPR, which is your ground penetrating radar, determine where the existing site utilities are. They're chomping at the bit. They want to deliver equipment this Friday, but until their contract is signed and insurance is in place, they'll start on Monday. Monday's activities will be soil erosion controls, and so that's when everybody will see activity. And Richard talked about the DEP permit, the stormwater permit that's in place, so we have to go ahead for phase 1. Questions? We'll have a lot more questions, I'm sure, in the next meeting.
At the next meeting, exactly. Any questions, thoughts, points of clarification on that?
The only thing, just we should probably sit down at the key dates for the school. Start date, we're usually in the week before, we have convocation here typically, so like things that we might need to adjust, we probably need to talk to you about election, you know, like there's things that come up in the fall that we just need to talk about.
We did with Gerber, we did go off the school calendar, teachers, there's new teacher orientation Monday and Tuesday, so we gave them the deadline of the 19th, which is the Friday
Oh,
prior.
that's good, yeah.
We don't want any traffic, even though it's going to be lighter traffic that whole week. We want the parking lot portion to be done. They have to work behind the fence at that point. But the parking lot work, we gave them the date Friday prior to the teachers show up. But elections and those other dates, teacher and service dates, definitely will.
Because whether it's at the library here, when it comes to elections, it's a lot more traffic.
Yep.
I think it's November 8th.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I have a question to Nelson. Are you planning to do drone photography by any chance?
We can.
So that's probably the most effective way to capture the progress on the site. I know you had a communications meeting earlier. If you have photographs or even videos from drones.
We already had that discussion.
We already had one.
Yes.
Next slide.
I'll keep going.
What we do is,
No, it's a good thought.
we do have drones, and we have someone that works at home, that is licensed to operate the drone. We do it periodically, take some like shots. I'll include it in my CM report, but also for the town. Region 14 non-alarm, if you go to their website, they still have the drone footage that we did there. It's important. It's a good visual to have.
Where is that? Sorry.
Region 14 non-alarm.
Might be interesting.
They have a project. They on their website they have a project update site. Even though it's done, I believe they still have the photos. But if not, if they don't, for whatever reason, I have them on file. It's a very large file. There's the megabytes, but I can put them on a pen drive.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, anything more on construction manager report, any questions? And we will go on to communications subcommittee report. I'll take this one. We did have a meeting right before this meeting, where we actually covered various topics. We talked about website updates, so we do have kind of a rolling agenda item where we always talk about the website, additional context and content that we add there. So we have some work we're going to do on Q&A and some highlighting of information that we're going to keep focusing on. We also spent a lot of time on, I want to make sure I get the wording right, communications out to surrounding neighbors in preparation for phase 1 work to begin. So we got a sample communication from ONG. We have provided some feedback on that and tried to get some kind of standardized look and feel around that, as well as highlighting specific pieces of information we thought were critical for both immediate surrounding neighbors to that construction line that we're talking about, but also in the entire abutting neighborhood. So we've got some approaches we're going to take there, which are going to include some direct contact where ONG is offered to do for immediately abutting neighbors, go door to door and kind of do some introductions, make sure we have numbers and names out there for contact, but also some additional points of communication for the entire surrounding neighborhoods to make sure that they understand our timeline, and also they have a point of contact if they have questions or concerns for this phase 1 portion. This is not something that will stop. We will continue with these conversations for neighborhood members specifically, as well as the additional engagement that we're going to continue with the community overall. We're now at the point where we need to make sure we pull in the immediate neighborhoods for conversation. So we're going to keep moving forward on that. I think that was, we had some general conversations. We're going to do some review of the communications plan overall at our next meeting, but that was really, I think, the bulk of our conversation. But please, anybody who's here, if detail you want to add.
Just some website updates.
Yeah.
Q&A on the website.
Yeah, was that everything? Oh, yeah, that actually, good point, Lindsay. So one of the things we talked about is now starting to put on our communications agenda a standard item around the groundbreaking. So we'll probably, over our next 2 meetings, we are going to have standard agenda item to start our planning. And then we're going to have a specific meeting where the only topic of conversation will be groundbreaking, probably closer to the end of August, to get us really prepped and ready to go for that October timeframe. If you remember, that's what we were looking for. So we will make sure that everybody's aware of that. If you want to be very involved in groundbreaking, we'd love to have you. So that's where we want to make sure we give people enough time to be engaged in that meeting in August to really start getting assignments and kind of understand how to start executing on that event. So. Any thoughts or questions on, we actually did kind of an interesting report out on our analytics as well. We did a quick look at the website too, which was interesting. So we got a baseline. We're going to be monitoring that a little bit more. Nothing, I don't think, earth shattering in those revelations, meaning our homepage has the highest level of traffic. But we did see also schematic design page as well, got some traffic, the financial update page got traffic. So we're seeing it there. People are going out and looking for information and you know, it's not huge quantities during the summer, but we're still seeing engagement, which is great. Okay, Alex, are there any thoughts, questions? All right. So we are going to go ahead and I think we can skip by number 9, that's professional partnership subcommittee report. We haven't scheduled one recently, so that's a placeholder for us. So item number 10, which is financial report. Are you going to take this one, Ben? Okay.
The only update we have to the financial report is an invoice which is on the agenda as a new business item today, and that is for Tall Timbers Marketing for phase 2 of the sustained communication plan, and that is for $7,500, which leaves us with the total amount on hand of $84,356.89.
Questions on financial reports and any dollars directly allocated to the business or management against us?
I think I'll just add, we did receive some invoices after the agenda went out, so they'll just be added to the next.
Any questions or thoughts on financial report before we move on to new business? All right, we lulling everybody to sleep with the heat. Is that what it is? It's warmed up. All right, so let's move right on to new business then. So can I get a motion to approve the attached invoice from Tall Timbers Marketing in the amount of $7,500? Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed? Right. Unanimously approved. All right, so now we're gonna get into the larger point of conversation for us this evening. So this is new business G2. So I'm going to ask for motion to accept the updated cost estimate and approve the updated DD list and alternate list as presented. Motion.
Second.
All right, we're going to open this up for discussion. So these conversations should start to feel a little familiar to us. Mark, do you want to start us out?
Sure. So as everybody knows, this is the third wave of cost estimates that have been provided by now ONG and TSKP's third-party consultant, PM&C. We did 2 separate estimates, and the work that the professional team has done over the last several weeks is to take those 2 cost estimates and reconcile them. So you've heard us talk about what that process entails. It's going through each line item, many hours. I think we had 8 hours one day and a couple hours the next before we got close to reconciliation. And what you see in front of you, this is sort of an agreed reconciliation between the 2. There was about $1 million between the 2. We boiled it down to about 600,000 and eventually carried that over in escalation. So PM&C was carrying a higher escalation rate than ONG. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So as we go through the project cost summary, I want to highlight 4 or 5 areas that really have affected change. So in the very first, Devin, if you can point to the top of the page there where it says early enabling package phase 1 BE credits. Yeah, right there, perfect. That line item is valued at $165,000, and those are credits that are going to come back on the enabling plan. If you recall, we talked about approving the enabling plan, and we went back to Gerber, who was the low bidder, asked them to identify some cost saving areas. We identified a change in the type of temporary fence, a few other items some base underneath that, they're reducing the amount of base underneath the temporary parking lot for a total value of about $165,000. So that comes off the top. What this building committee will do is approve a change order, a deduct change order that'll be presented by O&G for the building committee to approve and move those credits forward. If you skip down to the bottom of that section where it says accepted BE items, Devin, right there, perfect, yeah. You'll note that we identified about $2 million in trade costs in the under the Farmington High School project. If we've got a TBD there, right, because it's this building committee's job tonight to approve them. If it's so approved, then it'll just be this budget will remain and look the same when we're done here. So those are the BE items that we'll go through. And then if you go to contingency, a little further down, there's two line items there. The first one, design estimate contingency. If you recall, last time we did this, we left this budget with about 3.5% of, or 3% of, or almost 4% of design estimating contingency. We've since reduced that. Now that the drawings have expanded and there's more detail, more drawings to price, as we, what naturally happens here is that those contingency dollars move up into the construction cost dollars. So we've reallocated about 3% of those design contingency costs, leaving us with 1%, just about $1 million worth of design contingency remaining as the drawings are final. We're now past the pricing set, and TSKP is still working to develop and get these final drawings ready to go to the PCR to the state at the end of the month. And so we expect that if there were any pricing changes at that point, that we would have about $1 million cushion in there on the design and estimating contingency. Again, we are not going to do another cost estimate. Our barometer will be when we go out to bid and we get the numbers back from those subs in August, September timeframe. The escalation, this is the next item. We've left 1.82 in there. We had about 3.5% in there previously. So we've reduced that considerably as well. So there's another $1.8 million in escalation still in this line item. So you've got about $2.8 million left in cushion as we go out to bid. The bottom there, the total estimated construction costs, Devin, very down, very bottom. Yep, right there, that line item right there. Those two numbers that you see equal 115, just a little over 115 million. If you go to not the next line, but the line after it, you'll see that 115.6. That's the number we've been talking about since the beginning. That's our construction budget. Those are bricks and mortar costs, 115.6. This budget is now reconciled at 115.75. That's taking the $2 million in the BE items, the phase one, all the things we just talked about. That's how we were able to get to that number, leaving us with about $500,000 currently under budget. So if you recall, we've had this situation in the past where we've been a couple $100,000 under budget based on the BE items and what was accepted by the working group. So that's where this budget stands. OG, did I miss anything that you wanted to highlight?
No, I did. Good summary.
Okay. So before we move on to BE and alternate lists, are there any, or TSKP, any other things that I may have misrepresented?
If I could just comment on the item that is labeled under contingency, item 2, escalation. That's an odd percentage, and I think that was because it was an agreed upon number. I think you alluded just earlier. You alluded earlier that PM&C's projected escalation was higher than O&G's, and this was just a resolved number between the two. Difference of professional opinion.
Yep, no, that's correct, right? Because we were at 1%, I believe, when we started, and we adjusted that as part of the spirit of bringing this, reconciling the two together. And so we moved about $600,000 in escalation. Thank you. Any other comments before we go to B? So Devin, if you'd like to move to the next line item. So this is the, we can do the alternates, that's fine. On the alternate list, so there were 2 add alternates you heard Richard talk about. We now have 10 alternates. One of them is the number 8 is the deduct alternate for the abatement and demolition of that area. That's the existing high school gym area. The new alternates that we've added, so these are things that we've taken out of the scope, and we put them into this alternate list and hoping that bidding is favorable and gives the committee an opportunity to prioritize. Number 9 is add the operable wall partition between the gymnasiums. We understand that the operable wall partition was in fact a part of the ed specs and should have the opportunity to be included into this. And so at this point in the drawings, the most reasonable thing to do was to make it an add alternate, and we do have some conceptual pricing based on narratives and details of the wall that were provided by TSKP. ONG has come up with this $730,000 total cost line item, and the next one is add elevator number 3. You'll see in the BE items, the working group is suggesting to, based on suggestions provided by the professional team, to remove that elevator number 3. This was an elevator that was added later in conversations. If you recall, some of the maker space for the theater, the shop, scene shop got moved to the upstairs, and tried to put an opportunity to add another elevator into the design. It was not part of the original design, and so the idea is to remove that, and then if bidding is favorable, we add that back in. So TSKP's work has put together an alternate spec section for the plans, included this, and they're going to revise the drawings to identify the storage area and place of where that elevator is. And I believe, Mark, the pricing for that is all been incorporated in this. So all of the add back has been taken into consideration with this credit. So we now have a total alternate list of about $3 million. Any questions on the alternate list before we move forward?
This is part of the total budget.
I'm sorry?
Is it part of the 115 or is it?
So it is not, no. So these items have been taken out in order to maintain the 115. So if bidding comes back favorable and we have the opportunity to add things back, this committee will prioritize this list and say what's felt to be most important for the school.
I have a comment before you move on with the list of alternates. Just to make sure that the building committee, everybody understands what the description is, what it is, start to absorb it, because when bids come in, I want you to take action. So, make sure you understand what is entailed with each of these alternates. Doesn't have to be tonight, but make sure everybody understands. Pressure.
Right, but as we start to think about prioritizing, right? So, and understanding what each one needs. Thank you all.
Michael has his hand raised.
Michael?
Mark, I have a quick question. As we talk about the bids coming in, just want to clarify alternate number 8. Regardless of how the bids come in, how do we treat that number if by the time bidding is in and we're ready to execute on a GMP, but a decision has not been made about the demolition of Area G in the existing building? How do we handle that?
I'm going to write in that the pricing has to be held for quite a while. I think I'm even going to write in until probably just before the construction is going to start. So it'll be in the bid documents that they're going to have to hold that number available for acceptance by the owner. It won't be written into their contract, but the language will be on the contract, and it would have to get executed with a change order in the future. But we'll have the language in there so that if it does come down to wanting to do that, at least the vehicle will be there to pull it if you wanted to. Because it affects not only the demolition, but also the site work. So both of them are going to need to give us numbers that we will pull from them at a later time.
Christina, something to add?
Yeah, when is the referendum plan for that? Is it Next
Are we
May.
still thinking it's gonna be this November,
I
or
remember off the top of my head.
next May, or regular cycle, or next spring?
This is correct.
Next spring.
It'll be next spring with the budget.
So we'll have to hold that pricing till at least that.
Well, yeah, I figure you might as well hold it until a year later. You know, because they're not gonna be able to buy anything out, like they have to assume that they're gonna buy out the whole job.
Or hold it until the summer of '24, until they're ready to do it.
Yeah, so the thing is, they'll be buying all this extra material, right, your site, your curbing, and your this, and your that, and your asphalt, you know? They'll be purchasing it, and then they go to get the credit, so they make the credit. So,
So hypothetically, were a referendum to take place that would preserve a larger portion of the school, not requiring this demolition in the spring of '23, would these other add alternates? So suppose we did save 971,000 or 972,000. Would we, in the spring of '23, have the option to add something that was not included? Or are we going to be too far? Ask the question a different way. What could we add at that point in time, given the pace of where we'll be by the spring of '23, depending upon how that referendum should shake out?
well, I'm just looking
Yeah,
at what do you need,
Michael,
what do you
I-
make decisions on?
we won't be able to hold these numbers till to the end of the project, but you can't have this work done at certain times during construction, added back into the project as a change.
Right. So I'm just trying to figure out which by the spring of, in other words, suppose in spring of '23, a referendum is passed that a larger portion of the building is preserved, less demolition is required. The town saves $972,000. At that point in time, what could the building committee execute on to make up for that difference, rather than having a savings of 971,000, as we have all these other add alternates, which will still be a valid price to add, and which can we functionally add by spring of '23?
None of the other alternates will be held beyond 90 days, so everything will be a cost modification, and then from the number now, that's today's dollars, and we can ask the bidders to hold the other alternates for 90 days, but not beyond that. But from a scheduling, you probably miss your window for adding an elevator, so there's, from a scheduling standpoint, some of these will not be able to be added in.
So really, maybe the only ones that could be added by that point in time would be landscaping kind of things.
Well,
Does that sound right?
yeah.
Finishes, I would be able
I'm not
to.
sure.
Yeah, the finishes, you'll be able to add the finishes.
Some finishes could be added back in. Okay, I guess it would be helpful to understand that, to be able to, if there's, we're counting that sort of as a potential savings. If you were to take that out, our alternates would be 972,000 higher.
Right, but you're not counting on that savings right now, that's not in the
No,
number.
no, totally understand that. Totally understand that. Just trying to gauge that what we actually have is an alternate package of additions that is 4 million to something like that.
So anything that's finishes, you could probably, I mean, I know there's a
My
lead time
concern
issue.
is supply chain and lead time issues that
Yeah.
can crop up from now until spring of next year.
Michael,
And
could I?
you're gonna get, if you're gonna ask them to hold a number, you're gonna have an estimation number.
Well, they're only gonna hold it for 90 days, so they're missing out, the numbers will be garbage.
So,
You won't be
so
able to plan.
before we continue with the conversation, I'd like to propose that we bring this back to the professional team to kind of review and respond back to you, Michael, at our next building committee meeting with a potential, right? I understand what you're saying. How far along is the building going to be in the spring? What items might be passed just because construction has surpassed the opportunities to do so? And what could we spend that 970,000 on? The building committee would be able to select from. I'd like an opportunity to kind of look at that with the professional team and respond back.
Great, thanks.
Cat has her hand raised.
Yes, yeah.
I just wanted to add that although the referendum isn't until the spring of 23, the town council will be making a decision as to what that referendum will be. Likely, our goal is for December of this year or January. So we will know sooner what that project's going to look like than the referendum.
Right, so if we could tie some alternates to that date, then that would be helpful. Right, yeah, I think it all depends on what the 1928 building committee decides for a project. What you're saying is it's gonna pass. There's a chance that this might not be on that referendum.
Well, it would determine, because the 28 committee has a number of things they're looking at. Will it be just the 1928 building itself? Would it be more in the gym space and all of those things? So that would be defined when the 28 committee goes back to the town council, and the town council says, yep, this is what we're going with, go to referendum. Very similar to our process where we went to town council with our recommendation. So we're looking for a December timeframe to make that recommendation to town council for that scope to then go to the referendum. So we'll have a clearer picture as to what the size and scope of it will be before it goes to referendum.
Yeah, so this is a hypothetical can of worms that we're opening up right here.
Yeah.
And like you said, even if the council comes up with a recommendation for a referendum, doesn't mean it's gonna pass. So, we may have our answer that the 971 is out of the question right away, but the other way around, we can't count on it. So we're kind of going down wormholes here, and I think we're just gonna confuse everybody.
Yeah, they are some what ifs, for sure.
Yeah.
And it only becomes real to us once the funds are available.
Yeah.
That's really the only, and then I don't think we're gonna schedule around that decision, so wherever we are is where we are at that point yet.
So just out of curiosity, with everything that's happening, what's the confidence that, the bids will come lower or rather higher?
It's,
Because will we be working more on value items? Because, once the bid comes with everything's happening, what do we know now? What's the probability, like 10% that it will be less, or? Because I'm just trying to be realistic here.
I think the professionals in the room that have been doing this for 20, 30 years would love to be able to give you what industry standards could tell you, but we don't have those answers. So
This is a little unusual. This market right now is just so unpredictable. Who knows?
So I have a question. So when is Torrington High School going on?
Supposedly the end of next week or the beginning of following, so they're about a month ahead.
So there you go. So if Torrington High School, if the losing bidders get hungrier, it'll be very competitive.
Plus, Torrington will be a great benchmark in the market as to how hungry the Connecticut subcontractors are for projects of this size, measured against essentially the same cost estimating team, right? Because PM&C is on that as well, correct?
Correct.
So that'll be the best road test of this cost model against market pressures.
There's been 2 solid years of predictability on cost of materials, labor, workforce, you name it. And as much as things went up this way, they're also on this way now. And we just don't know, because it's so steep, we don't know where we are. And there could be subcontractors that are saying, I don't want to be out of a job in a year, and I want to have certain work. So there may be some that may bid this lower just because they want to be assured they have payroll for the next 2 years. There may be so many of those, there may be none. There may be some that is. And with Torrington in the mix, like I said, it's literally anybody who says they can answer that question is pretty much lying at this point. We have no idea. That's why we've gone with, we've been really pushing a working group. Obviously, it's you guys aren't privy to the hours and hours of conversations we've had, but the conservative numbers, the 2 estimates, the escalation percentages that are way higher than anything we've ever seen, are all trying to make sure that we don't end up with a huge swing and trying to be conservative, but we just don't know.
Fair enough.
And been trying to identify today's market price, like what it would cost you today, right? This is what you're looking at. These are today's prices. So, you know, we hope that that's a good thing. Is hope that things start to level off and that the continued escalation and dollars that we continue to put on this thing are going to cushion us for us.
Thank you.
And everybody good on ad alternates? We heard you loud and clear, Laura, that we're gonna have to make sure we're clear on what each one of these things are and start working on prioritization. Yes.
Yeah, I guess just as a part of the conversation, I'm just looking at, we talked about ball field already, I'm looking at the big chunks, the real significant potential losses here, because we have no guarantee that any of this is gonna come back, right? That partition between the gyms, and now I'm looking at tennis courts, I don't think we talked about that last night.
No, we're
Oh,
about
yeah,
I'm flipping,
So that's okay.
maybe mine is a broader discussion.
If you wanna wait till we go
Yeah.
through BE and then we'll.
Yeah, because then we'll have a better full picture, yeah.
So anything specifically on those items?
I'll just add that, you know, this list is only a portion of what made this list. There's so much more that we went through. If you guys go back and look, like, there's so many things we just outright rejected or accepted and just said, we're taking it out. That this is the only ones that we kind of left in there and said they're extremely important, but maybe we are not the highest priority compared to other things. So I think that, you know, this has been a process over the last 6 months that, you know, is going to get us to the next discussion. Or at least set the table for it.
Sure. And we will update the master, the grant list that we updated to the committee, so the committee will see the items that even aren't on this list that were rejected by the working group, right? Those, all of that big list will. So the list that you have in front of us, these are the items or the selections that the working group committee came to concession on, our agreement on, and the first 8 items are items that are that have been value engineered out. They're not on the drawings anymore. We've deleted another 420 square feet of skylights, so the design team recognized that there was a way, in fact, to, and anytime you want to jump in on any of these, you can, but that they would not affect the design intent as to a palatable level that the design team was willing to concede to. So we've added another 420 square feet of skylights at an approximate project cost of about $68,000. Change the curtain wall under 12 feet high to storefronts. Richard, Michael, that's interior. That's
These are exterior.
exterior. That's right.
Storefronts or curtain walls. You're not going to tell the difference. It's just different configuration of the aluminum tube. The appearance will be very similar, and that's already underway.
Yeah, and so that's about a $97,000 savings. Delete the elevator. You heard me talk about that in the alternate, right? So that's at $180,000. Delete some entry grills. These are, I believe, the floor mats.
Yeah,
When you
walk off
mats, when you first walk into a building, you'll see sometimes a depressed slab, and you won't even notice that it's a depressed slab, but the walk-off mat sits inside of that, and so the flooring's level, but they're mats that they can pick up and physically shake out. We've taken them out of this is a creative strategy to take them out of the base bid and keep them or purchase them at FF&E right now. And I think, Michael, I don't know if you want to expand on this, but your experience in the last couple of projects is that they're just crazy expensive right now, right?
I'm just trying to buy baby formula right now. There's a tremendous spike in the market for what these things are. By delaying them to FF&E, we think there could be a owner-provided, owner-contractor installed piece to get a better buy on it later. If not, we can put in a vinyl walk-off mat, which will function perfectly well in that area. So there's other options downstream, but
There was only two locations, or three locations.
All the main entrances.
So, almost $200,000 for 3 walk-off mats. I have to look at
Well,
opportunities.
this is not just a walk-off.
I understand.
It's an aluminum system and it has abrasive pads in it and it's in a recess. So it has the ability to accumulate things that you were bringing in. The cheaper way to go is just put a carpet-like material, but then you're constantly cleaning it.
Thank you for that. Item 5, reduce landscaping, smaller tree caliber sizes. So it's a small, right about 30,000, looked at the landscaping and what trees and areas could we reduce the actual size of the tree or plant at those locations. We offered an item to delete windscreens at the tennis courts. Right now, they were not specified, but were included in the plans. And so to take those out was a savings of about 36,000. Delete or replace the vehicle gate with electronic gate. This was about $48,000. This isn't a gate at the entrance in the back of the school, I believe, to get to the upper athletic fields. Is that the right location? Yeah.
it's from
Oh,
Crestwood.
It's from Crestwood, that's right, yeah. We reviewed this with the security.
Correct. So a manual gate, they found perfectly acceptable. So rather than a powered motorized gate.
And then reuse a partial FF&E, so that's reduce the FF&E and technology budget. So between FF&E and technology, we've got about $6 million in our contingency line item. This would be to take $500,000 out of that and bring it to the construction budget. And so leaving 5.5 million between FF&E and technology. Totals about $1.1 million in DE items. We were sort of at a standstill in terms of identifying areas that we could get our budget back in line, and looked at several opportunities, larger items, one of them being the tennis courts, and came to the conclusion that a way to potentially do this is to move those tennis courts to a separate bid package. And so the drawings for the tennis courts remain intact. We will be asking the bidders to bid those tennis courts separately. We think there's an opportunity there for savings by separating out the bid package and then making that decision come bid day as to what to do with that. And so right now, the dollars equated are incorporated in that $2 million. So you see the approximate trade cost of $2 million. That's that $2 million that you saw in the budget as part of the credits. And so that's kind of where we stand today. So this is the culmination of working group discussions and a long list of items provided by the professional team. And that's where we sit today.
Questions, thoughts?
Just one last question. What's included in the technology budget? Because, it's almost 10% of the FF&E budget. So what's being taken out of it?
So I know that Ross is not here, but Stan was part of those conversations as well. We talked about that the school itself is purchasing IT equipment, some IT equipment that's part of that, and what would be a comfortable number, not having a final idea of what those IT costs would be. So trying to identify any areas that we can pull. And so in that budget number, that's to buy all of the non-fixed IT items along with the any of the new FF&E furniture. So if there's any furniture that can be reused, that's a discussion to be had. But again, those dollars won't be spent so further down in the project. More IT would be spent sooner than the FF&E. But
Yeah, actually, it reminds me, when we started the discussions about EE, my suggestion was we cut that by $2 million.
That's correct.
And both Matt and Sam said, "Oh, my." But it did give them an opportunity to revisit their own internal budgets for that. I know Susan Pinckney in my office has been working on the FF&E side of this budget, and she's confident that she can achieve the budget. She can achieve the purchases that you need with new furniture. So I think the 500,000 was after some discussion and research and calculation of what's left.
Sometimes we have avenues with a higher reimbursement
That's right.
for
Yes.
technology. So we're trying to be really smart about what we do outside of this project that might actually save the town more money on technology rather than going with the reimbursement rate of this project.
Right, other E-rates give you,
E-rates.
it's less
Is that
cost
right?
to the town than this school construction.
Right.
Therefore, it's smarter to move it out of this budget.
Kathy, would that be capital then, on the board side, would it? would the town
And I
side?
think Matt may have mentioned this in the budget process, that he's building that out in future years because we get a higher reimbursement rate, which ultimately all the money comes from the town. So whether it's this project or in our annual budget, we want to try to get the most savings. And so, you know, if we can achieve greater savings in another bucket, that's what we're going to try to do.
But maybe kind of a notation for next budget cycle or a subsequent budget cycle to say this.
You can, you know, see our
Value
capital
engineering.
7 years out.
Yeah.
So, without going crazy hypotheticals again, what we try to do, even the tennis courts is not gonna be a popular one if people start talking about it. But we're trying to identify items that, A, first and foremost, don't cut programmatic needs. The school, what we're here for. to begin with. Education. And so going forward, if there's avenues through Board of Ed with their IT or capital projects through the town council or the town itself with the next budget, that we can pick apart things that aren't part of the school project but can be done after, or, you know, it can be done if the 1928 comes out with some version and has a referendum that can include some. So we're trying to kind of keep the larger project intact and kind of hit the periphery things, I guess is the best way to put it. Because of what I said before, that, you know, everything's so unpredictable that we just don't know what we're gonna end up in a couple of months, and we're really trying to be as flexible as possible at this point with what we have in front of us. I think it should be noted again, and this will be a topic of conversation you'll probably get, you know, especially if they start talking about, we've already heard about ball fields, now maybe tennis courts, what do you mean we'll have them? This is not a big deal. The state has given us a higher reimbursement, but our number is fixed. Like, this is what we can spend. So the taxpayers will save more money because we'll be, you know, borrowing less against it, but we cannot just arbitrarily raise the price of the project because our referendum that we went out for has a very solid fixed number that we're not allowed to surpass without another referendum. And that's kind of that, this is the communications thing over the next couple of months. We have to be out in front of some of these BE lists.
It's important that too, there's 5 million in technology and FF&E and 6 million in owners contingency. So you still have another 6 million in owners contingency unidentified, but those dollars will be spent on, with the exception of a few things, some amendments that we did to TSD's contract and things like that. Very little has been spent. Right, very little. You're still.
What's the normal use of that?
I'm sorry?
What's the normal use? Like, where do those usually go?
Unforeseen conditions, and once you start digging in the ground, you may discover something that was not documented. So that would be a change order, for example. There could be other change orders that we encounter, maybe something that the committee decides it would be nice to have. This sometimes comes up even during construction. You have the option to execute that. There could be also regulatory or inspection requirements. Fire marshal has the right, because he has a badge, to go into a building and cite deficiencies, even new buildings. And so he could cite some things that he wants to add, whether they're pull stations or emergency lighting or exit signs, whatever. That would become a change order, and that would be funded by owners.
If something becomes needed and it's not on the documents, so if there's an error on the drawings and we didn't buy something from a contractor that's necessary for whatever reason, then those would be an owner responsibility. And that's what that put this together. But as time goes on, the risk of using those dollars goes way down. And then we start asking questions, what would you like to allocate it for? And we get together and we go from not using any of it to using all of it by the time we get to the end.
Keep in mind that you have renovations towards the end, so it's not just the new building.
Yeah, the 900 would potential.
You're not gonna know what you never have there.
For sure, what's behind the wall, what's under the roof, right?
I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what that bucket of money is for and why it's important. that
Right,
it's
it's
there.
not just gonna be for, oh, we're coming into it with a lot of CAD ultimates and value engineer things that, yes.
And all the budgets that are there are customary, they're normal for a project of this size. They're not smaller than they should be, and they're not larger than they should be. They are what we normally would recommend for a budget of this size. Not just us, but the whole profession.
Yes, so Mark, you mentioned the full list, I think that historical perspective and kind of that in totality is important. When do we expect to see?
So we presented that, not the last of the committee, but one prior to that. And so that you would just see the added items, right? There's a handful of rejected items that were not accepted by the working group committee for whatever reason. Those items will also be on that list and labeled as rejected. So it's important to note what's been approved and what's been, yes, we'll have that for the next
Yeah,
meeting.
I think we should have a full, well, that's based on approval this evening.
Yeah,
right. We'll look at here, but yeah, that would be updated and we see that full view.
Yeah, because I think for me as a Board of Ed member, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, it just gets to, it's concerning. I mean, we're at a point where you wonder, where are we, does this look like what the board approved? When do we cross that line? Or I feel like we're really close to that line, and what the community saw and bought into and voted on. So, you know, and I heard Johnny say, we try to keep it from program, but baseball field and tennis courts, and that's not educational, but athletics is part of the educational program. I also think it's recreational opportunities for the community as well, because when we start paring those things back, things shift, and we don't have a lot of other options for recreational space, or like we're talking about baseball, that requires something to be built or completely renovated over at IR. It's not like, oh, we'll just shift things around. You don't have a lot of opportunity there to make up for that loss. It never comes back. Something that people potentially will not come back.
These are all difficult decisions, and I say.
For a lot more hours.
And it's not, and I don't want to make this a working group thing, because at the end, it's the building committee's the one voting to finalize this list. And obviously, this is the last one. I do want to also add that as you look at these over the next couple of months, I think amongst the building committee members, especially the voting members, start to think, you know, not crazy hopeful, but if we do end up on the plus side a little bit, in what priority would you put these? Because we won't have a lot of time, as some of the professional partners have mentioned, to add these in or whatever. The discussion time won't be months and months. It'll be a meeting, maybe two, to kind of put these in priority. And I know, you know, I may think some things are much more important than you may think. And I think that those things are, I think, thoughts you kind of have to look at now and get it in your head so that we're ready. If that opportunity arises, I'll be very careful after that. not to be too hopeful of the extra money, but if for some reason we get some awesome bids and we're there and we have 800 grand left, where are we putting it? You know, so just keep that in mind.
Questions, thoughts? The items that just weird.
I'll just say, I don't like them, but I think I'm gonna vote for them.
Yeah, it's a hard conversation, right? Or at the end, I think it's a valuable comment to have to say, where are we right now? What does it mean? What's the impact? And we're kind of right on the line of, you know, some pretty significant decisions that we're making, which I think are normal in any project, but it is that much more difficult based on the environment we're in right now. So I just want to make sure everybody's very clear on how this is stated, what's on these lists, because we're going to be asking for approval as they are represented here. So I just want to make sure we understand what they mean and what potential impacts.
Meg, maybe it makes sense to just clarify too. We've identified items 1 through 8 as being eliminated. 3, just to be clear, if I'm right, 3, while it's being eliminated, is the only one of those 8. Am I right that potentially becomes added back in through the add alternates that we looked at before? And then we have another item that isn't numbered, but it is removed from the project costs in order to get to the 115 million. I don't know that it's worth going into a lot of detail about why it's a separate bid package versus an add alternate, but essentially it in a rough sense functions somewhat like that, so that people understand we're eliminating the tennis court, but that essentially, depending upon how the bids come in, there is the ability, even though it's not called an add alternate, for it to be added back in. Does that make sense? And am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. It just doesn't show up. It's not showing up in the add alternates because it's being treated as a separate bid versus an add alternate, but essentially the same thing. So I guess the other point I just want to draw out is that when we look at potentially things as Johnny's saying, if things work out favorably and there isn't as much escalation as we have estimated in the numbers that we're carrying, or bids come back more favorable, we have 3.31, let's call it 3.4 million. If we take out the deduct, it's actually more like 4.3 million. And you'd be adding another 1.1 million onto that. So you're somewhere around 5.4 million of potential things to add back in. And I hope we're all clear. I don't think there's a path forward that we get to add back $5.4 million into this project. But I just want to make certain that I'm understanding that correctly, that if we were to basically only look at ads, we'd be at about 4.3. And then with the 1.1, we're at about 5.4 of potential add alternates. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So what I'm hopeful that we can maybe do, maybe focus on the communication side, is that we have, over the course of the past year, eliminated approximately how much from this project? Is it about, are we up to about 10 million now? This last, and when I say eliminate, this go around now, we're eliminating 2.5, is that correct? 2.225, yeah. If you were to look back at everything else that we've eliminated from the beginning, what would that be?
I think you're in the ballpark. I go with the $10 million number.
That's what I was thinking. So I'm just thinking that I think it would serve us well to communicate to the public, because it's really hard. You look at these things and you think, wow, look, they're on budget. They're still delivering a school. What I hope we can communicate to the town leaders who need to be tracking this is, I think it was Beth who was saying about the Board of Ed, and to the town council, is we've taken $10 million out of this project to be able to absorb cost increases. And I think some thoughtful dialogue needs to perhaps be initiated at this point in time around what some of those, how difficult some of those trade-offs are. There's some of these things that I can see them go, and it's perfectly fine in the additions part, but we've already let 10 million go. And in letting that 10 million go, at that same point in time, we got another 14. And I'm not advocating that we go back for another referendum, but I am advocating some thoughtful dialogue about the unique nature of the times that we're in and what it means to eliminate $10 million and still want to look at adding back about, I can't remember, if it's 4.5 million, something like that. 5.4. I just think that we shouldn't wait to have conversations with these different commissions, and maybe we think about how we're communicating that loss of the 10 million, and consider if the town charter allows it, maybe a combined meeting of the town council, the Board of Ed, to sort of review the particular sensitivities of what it means to absorb the cost increases that we've been seeing, and what the magnitude of a couple of these pretty significant trade-offs are. I mentioned that because I'm in support of having to do this right now. This is what is in our ability to do. I think it's wise to not wait till the end of all this to have some dialogue about what trade-offs we've had to encounter, and to the extent that both the Board of Ed and the town council can help in communicating, I think that would serve the entire town well as this building project.
Michael, all I can say is that until we have actual bids, it's hypothetical. So, but I can also tell you that internally, the town has already talked about this, and I'm sure Board of Ed is as well, about what could potentially be coming to make us aware so that we're up to date and up to speed if any actions can be taken on our side. Again, I can't represent that. That's a different function. But those conversations are already happening.
So do you feel as though by the time we get our final costs in, that may be a time of where a joint meeting might be helpful to have?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay. Good, because I know that these are estimates, but I don't hold out a whole lot of hope that they're gonna reverse course. I am pleased that we've still got some contingencies in there in terms of design and escalation, but I think those are going to be, I worry that those, I'm concerned that those will be eaten up and we're not going to see savings, but I will be delighted if the opposite comes true. So just as a person who's worked in all these, I appreciate all of what the school has done. I appreciate all of what each of these partners have brought forward, and I support what's here in the context that I think that there are some difficult conversations that need to be happening as these finalized numbers come in about how we can continue to meet what I believe we communicated as expectations for the town in terms of the overall project.
To Beth and Michael's point, when we look at the value engineering items, do we have like I know we have a list of accepted, rejected, open, but do we have amounts associated with each of them?
We do at the time that they were considered. I don't know if those numbers have changed over the last several months, but
Yeah.
yes, there
I
is
mean,
I
Might
have
be
a,
helpful to add the amount, just so people do, I think it's a valid point to say how much actual money has been, taken out, whether it's been placed in an ad alternate or just rejected altogether. I think it's just important, whether it's the community, the Board of Ed, the town council, from what we had originally planned. I think that would be helpful to see the actual.
we have total dollar values. Really.
Impact on the project, the work of the committee and the subgroups and just, and what it looks like.
It's very interesting. It's the whole picture, right?
Right.
It's everything in context.
Which understandably they
Conversation.
wouldn't have, right, even if you read the agenda.
Yeah. And, and I think when it's have real numbers, say, this is really what it is. It's gonna cost us. Here's all the decisions we had to make to get there. Let's have every conversation that could be had at that point to see what does that mean. Yeah, I think it's having those conversations is an important part of the process.
Have you looked at the savings in the operational and maintenance costs for the new building versus the old buildings that might we can see?
All outside of.
No, I'm just saying, for something to be done eventually. The budget that
Oh, you're
gets,
saying.
yeah, because I don't know,
Offset.
yes, so if people ask, if we don't have budget,
Right.
are you gonna give away the tennis courts and the baseball courts? But if you see there's a definite savings, you're gonna see the operational maintenance cost once the new building comes. There might be a path forward, at least something to consider.
Talked about that pre-referendum, it was a really hard number, difficult number to get to.
Right. I do remember, we did work with Colorado engineers. They did some energy analysis, they did projected costs. And there were savings to be had. I can't recall what they were. And now those savings are even greater considering the utilities. I think.
Yes.
Just to illustrate. 500,000 a year or something, or 500 somewhere in there per year of operational, and it was energy based. This,
yeah.
But I mean, this is going back 18 months,
Yeah.
6 months ago. Rate hikes weren't an issue. Ukraine didn't exist. At least the issue of Ukraine, I should say. Be careful how I say that. But this is like the 18 months we're talking about. There's been some massive changes in everything. We've been riding a roller coaster through this whole thing. So I think it's more of a communications of just making people understand that this isn't just a snapshot. Like this is how we got here. And I think to Kathy and Mike's point, this is, here's the list that we did and why. And everybody knows the circumstances we've been under. They could be, bullet pointed, but everybody knows. That's just it's a hard conversation, but we don't understand it.
I do think in tagging on to that we owe it to the community to know that we have the conversation, look at all possibilities.
Right.
We evaluated all angles here with all the right people in the room, saying this is our best way to move forward in the best interest of, the entire community and town. So, and I think we have pieces of that conversation. We don't have the full puzzle yet, the full view. But I think that's an important part of the conversation. Make sure that we've done all our due diligence.
It's just unfortunate because the whole process with the state legislators, the delegation was to help us, well, because it was that snafu. The office, which was represented about $1 million, but also escalation as to the timing of our project. And it doesn't really, get to that the way the referendum was written. It's unfortunate.
But at the end, there's silver lining to that because there's an extra 10% reimbursement. We bonded early with great interest rates. So on the back end, there's some, and that's where I'm saying that conversations within the town are how to make up some of that.
Okay.
that's the whole point of what I was trying to say. I don't want to
I know,
commit
I know.
anything, 'cause
No,
it's
no,
not in
I
my
know.
place to do so, but those conversations are happening now that the taxpayers have stuck to what we've said, have gained extra reimbursement, have bonded at a lesser amount on a lot of the money. And so capital projects in those conversations are all promises that are going to be hard to unkeep. Let me put it that way. And those conversations of what could happen in 2 months are already starting, and how we could, lessen the flow, let's put it that way. Because there's a lot of, you can't just say I'm throwing an extra 3 million at it. But capital projects, ball fields are all things, ARPA funds, those are all conversations that are swirling around. That could, make this a little bit easier.
Creativity, flexibility, looking at the big picture.
And putting it all out there and saying, yes, no, yeah, we did our work. I think it's important for the community to see that we've done all that, to get the best product on our end, for the best school that we could possibly build, but yet keeping with the commitments that we made.
And as the stuff starts filtering out to the community, I'm kind of curious, and Kathy, this is for you, we talked a little bit about baseball, and parking on the fields, it's just a big chunk and a big change, I think, for what people expect.
That is the one that,
Resources, but what is losing if we were to lose all of the tennis courts on the campus of the high school? What does that look like for the tennis program? I know there's rec programs and other things that happen.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a major issue because we can't just simply use IARs. It's not something that, it's going to be a simple fix. And from what I understand, you have to have a certain amount of courts and they have to be regulation and all of that. So it's not really simple. So that is something that we definitely would have to talk about, the impact of, baseball and the tennis courts as we go forward. So at this point, they're not totally gone because there's always that opportunity there. But if that were to happen, I think we really do have to say, well, then what's our plan B for these programs, athletic programs?
And remember, the tennis courts, the ball field, over the next 2 to 3 years are not there, right?
Anyway, yeah.
So that's also,
Yeah.
is this a 2-year issue? Is this important? So there's.
Right, is it a temporary issue or is it mostly more permanent?
how many tennis courts in the area, because I used to work at a tennis club. They're really hard to find. Yeah.
I'd like to say we could reuse the temporary parking lot by painting some lines on it. That's how.
Also last more than 2 years.
My kids will complain because they can't sled down the hill, one after another.
Yeah, I know.
It's a small point, but maybe we should just mention it as well. One of the strategies for breaking out the tennis courts this way that ONG brought to the table, which we all supported, was we're bidding it out now as a separate bid package. So they'll have another contractor bidding. And it's called the value management list because it's sort of encompassing the thought that a smaller package where the specialty contractors that do the tennis courts can bid direct to ONG, which is direct to the town, and not be packaged underneath the site contractor. Hopefully the cost comes in lower. So we're hoping we're gaining value by having it bid separately and also have a longer duration for the award of that package so that if we need time to figure things out, that package can sit a little while the critical package is being awarded and we're figuring out priorities and how to best allocate dollars. So that was the strategy that the team brought forward.
All right, I want to make sure I don't close this conversation prematurely. This is significant, the conversations we're having here. Our last value management exercise that we will be doing, and significant conversations we're having. So I want to make sure people have the opportunity to ask questions, continue conversation. I sense a lull in the conversation, but I certainly don't want to stop that prematurely if there's more clarification required.
Maybe just to clarify what you had last shared, that this is the last time that we'll do this value management exercise. It's not the last time that we may sit down to figure out what we cut from the project, though, correct?
So the bids come in extremely unfavorable. Conversation to be had there tonight.
So in other words, the bids come in above where our estimates that we're carrying right now, plus our escalations. Then, Mark, we may be back at a place where we're saying, what more do we need to take out of the project?
Escalation and design contingency. both.
Right, right.
It's a little bit different than what we've done to date. I mean, we're not penalty against the budget as we see it, right? We have more factors now in the conversation. But it is still talking about reducing scope of work potentially at that point. Is that true? Doesn't have to.
First, we would talk about the design estimated contingency and the escalation. That's the first step. And then I think it becomes a scope discussion when the drawings are done. So then we would talk about what things could be identified as scope.
Well, yeah, what could you change in the scope of the drawings? That, in other words, might you make a substitution of one material for another? That's still a potential, correct?
Only if the bids come in too high.
Yeah, that's, you're not gonna get you're not gonna get your best value in a post-bid environment for those types of changes, but you'll be under extreme duress to award contracts. So yes, we would do that, but that's speculating. At bid day, when all the bid packages plus other G's fees to add up to 115.
What's the advantage of, again, having the 20 bid packages?
Oh, God, 36.
36 bid packages, is we have the ability to award 30 of those bid packages, find the ones that are way over budget and reanalyze those numbers. So if for some reason the HVAC systems package comes in over, we could reanalyze that system and say what other options are there. Change.
So it's a best case scenario that we don't have to come back and do anything other than what has been done.
That's
Best
correct.
case scenarios, we got extra money.
Yeah.
Well said, yes. I'll go with that's the better of the best, yeah. Okay.
So again, just to be clear too, that design contingency and an escalation, when we present the bid package values at bid times, so that when we're taking concrete numbers, we have a budget compared against, that escalation and contingencies are going to be already. Really at bid day, those contingencies and escalation are spent. Don't think that they're going to sit there as a separate contingency to adjust the numbers. They're going to be done at the time that we establish those final budget numbers for each of the bid packages.
Just no resource spent.
Yeah, I was gonna say absorb.
Right,
They're
absorb.
absorbed.
They're adjusted.
Okay, can I ask another question? As we get bids in, as we close out and everything is selected, as we go through buyout, if we actually find a buyout that we're saving money, is that an option for us to consider whether or not that gets added into our owner's contingency, or whether or not we select any of the add alternates to be added? So in other words, there's a number that gets set based upon all the bids that are coming in. That's one thing. As we do buyout, is there a potential for, obviously there's a potential for savings. Are we able to use that for pulling back in some add alternates?
For no buyout savings, you're gonna be awarded to the lowest responsive bidder. So whoever that is, it's the public number, whatever the number is, and they don't change their number based on finding out. It's whoever's got the scope of work included, the lowest number. So what could happen is when I present the cost summary to you when the bids first come in, I may be carrying the second bidder in case I haven't scoped somebody yet which will be the case in this scenario, because there's so many bid packages. If I'm concerned about the low number, I will put into my cost summary the second bidder or even the third, depending on how the numbers turn out, just to give you an idea, snapshot of where we think the numbers are. Then when we end up doing the scope review and it turns out the lower bidder was good, then you can adjust things. But that first night or the second night when the bids are all in, if I think somebody's too low, I'll carry a different bidder's number.
So if I hear you, Laura, what you're saying is once the bids are all in and factoring in your after you've adjusted for making certain that the low bid actually covers all the scope, when that's all done, if I hear you correctly, they may go through buyout, and if there's savings, that's not ours, correct?
It's not yours, it's theirs.
Okay, I was clarifying just to make certain, because in some situations, again, that aren't necessarily this public thing, that savings that's attained through buyout becomes available either through contingency or to the owner, but not in this situation.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Anything else anybody wants to add at this time? Are we both? I know. One of the things that definitely we just want to make sure we get your input on this and represent this accurately. Down there, we're just discussing the fact that, you know, I think to be most accurate on the motion that we're actually approving this evening is the updated cost estimate we reviewed, the updated BE list and alternate list. And if I think it might be to our benefit to call out the tennis courts as a separate, although it's on our BE list document, that it really is the separate bid package for the tennis courts.
Different than the other VE items because we're not doing them as separate. I just want to be, as people look back on motions, it's completely accurate and clear to the community. So I don't know, Mark and others, is that the right wording for the tennis court? It's like a separate bid package for tennis courts, or how should it be worded? Because it is different than the VE list. And we're saying as a committee, we want that put out there as a separate bid. So it should be part of the motion, I think.
Well, digging in the weeds, it's still an alternate. We're just doing it as a separate bid package. It's still,
In the documents, though, it's on the VE list and not the add alternate list. So I just wanted it to be accurate, so we don't have to come back and redo.
As an add alternate would mean that there's something in the drawings to replace it. Correct? So there would be.
Not only that, I mean, it's to your, it's also just to your interest to keep the alternates. Alternates are good tools to use, but they create noise in the bidding process. If we can just do this as a discrete package that you can or cannot award, it essentially functions like an alternate, but it's a clean thing. So the language of the motion, I think the easiest thing to do here is to amend the language of the motion. That they're approving this with the tennis courts as a separate bid package. The value management list with the tennis courts as a separate or discrete bid package. And that's, to me, it's just a motion. They're signaling an intent, but the document can remain intact as presented.
We wouldn't change anything that.
We wouldn't change any of these documents. You're reflecting the conversations that we've had here on how it's supposed to have. And it doesn't affect us. I don't think it affects you.
When I go to present the list of contracts to award, it will either be an error or all.
Yeah.
It's usually part of the list of contracts.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. Is that, I don't see any risk in us
No, I
doing
think
that.
that's a-
I don't
I
think any
think that's
risk
a good
going
point.
in.
I think it reflects the tenor of the conversation we've had here.
Correct, yes.
having reviewed these documents, so it's perfectly appropriate.
Does that make sense to everybody?
It makes sense to me. Do all the voting members understand that the tennis courts are not part of the 115 million? That's the only thing I just want to, based upon Kathy's question. The tennis court has eliminated it in order to reach the package price of 115 million. I want to make sure that the voting members of the committee know that.
And that's I do back if we update, if we accept the updated costs. If that is reflected in there. So by approving that, that is an acknowledgement of.
By approving that, you're $525,000 under budget.
Yes, based on. the estimate that we have. Yeah.
I didn't hear that last thing. Are you saying I'm sorry, you're saying that by approving this, we are 500,000 under budget. Is that what was just said?
Correct, Michael.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks.
Read the motion.
Well, I think I have to ask for a motion to amend.
You want to read that? Oh, that's fine.
Because we're actually in discussion. It's still, with the motion that's currently on the table, just to recap, was to accept the updated cost estimate, approve the updated fee list and alternate list as presented. So that's motion that's currently on the table and under discussion. So I am actually going to ask for a motion to amend the motion that is currently on the table. Correct? Yeah.
Yes. If you,
And you want to read the amendment? Do you want to have it?
But I don't, and then once we approve that, don't I present the new motion? With the amendment?
Well, you could say we're going to amend
motion
and
to
add
amend with
this
this
language.
language, correct?
And just doing one?
As long as, if you motion
I
to
wanna make sure.
amend and add with this additional language, and then
To include.
when, yeah,
To
and
include.
then
Once
when
that's
you would have to
approved,
okay,
then
I would
you
have to
do
second,
the
because we were
then
the
you
original
do the
motions.
It had,
I have to put this language in the motion to amend, is what you're telling me.
yes, and then you say now, with the new motion, you have to accept, you have to vote on that motion. Because you're amending, then you're voting. Then you have a new motion, and then you vote to approve the motion.
But the amendment also has to include the language of that we're going to amend to.
Yeah, I would, yeah, just to be clear, right?
Okay. All right, so can I have a motion to amend the current motion, which is to accept the updated cost estimate and approve the updated fee list and alternate list as presented, including, right, the new language, which I'm gonna say. Yes. And so the change here is rather than so updated VE list with tennis courts as a separate bid package. So I need somebody to approve that.
Second.
Motion second, right? So any discussion on that?
What, can you read the motion that we're voting on now? Read the amendment. That's fine. Just read the amendment and I'll, so I'm understanding what we're voting on.
Amended motion is to accept the updated cost estimate and approve the updated VE list with tennis courts as a separate bid package and alternate list as presented.
Okay, thanks.
We're voting on whether we're approving that
The
amendment.
amendment.
But then we have to vote again.
No, that whole
On
motion.
the
Then
amendment.
we,
First you vote on the amendment, then you vote on the amended motion.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So. Did we, somebody
Yeah,
actually?
first and second.
Yes, so now it's,
Okay, no, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so that piece is approved. So now I'm going to ask for a new motion, correct? To accept the updated cost estimate and approve the updated VE list with the tennis courts as a separate bid package and alternate list as presented.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All Tina, thank you. Thank you for the support.
It's
Does
easy
that
to do
work?
if you're wearing a powder blue.
I'm like, at this time, it's time, I'm like, I don't know. Okay, all right, so that was our last piece of new business, so the only thing we have left is a motion to adjourn. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll adjourn at 6:56.
Great.